Hello everyone. Prior to coming up this particular video, I had two videos already available on YouTube. One basically focusing on C programming language and the other one on operations research. There are quite good number of students who studied data structures under my guidance, and then it was a fruitful flow in terms of trying to study a programming language, particularly a nature of C, and then followed by data structures. So there was a sort of a demand and request from quite good number of students in terms of giving them inputs on the next subject, which is an extension of data structures, what we call it as design and analysis of algorithms. And when somebody asks with so much of intention, love, and affection, it is definitely not possible, to basically deny them or basically land up hurting them. So a simple attempt is made by me in terms of trying to give you some inputs on design and analysis of algorithms. So you have my email ID there. Any doubts at any given point of time, please feel free to mail me. Now, the prerequisite to understand this particular subject is that the listener should be in a position to, or I feel personally that the listener should be well versed with the subject called as data structures, and hence, once you are comfortable with both C programming language and data structures, things in design and analysis of algorithms will be much better in terms of understanding, and of course, the journey will be much smoother and transparent. Now, before we dwell on to the subject called as design and analysis of algorithms, I have a simple question is why actually we have to study algorithms? Algorithms plays a central role in both science and practice of computing. The obvious question that comes in mind is why do we need to study algorithms? Right? If you are going to be a computer professional, then there are both practical and theoretical reasons to study algorithms. Definitely, the term algorithm might not be new to any one of you. When you're exposed to programming language, or probably when you're exposed to introduction to computers, we would have come across these two terminologies called as algorithms and flowchart. But it is also possible that we would have just gone through the algorithms. We would have written some algorithms for various programs that we have done in C, and probably algorithms for some of the data structure applications which revolved around data structures like stacks, queues, linked list, trees, and so on. But did this question come in our mind that why exactly we need to study algorithms? From the practical point of view, you need to know a standard set of algorithms from different areas of computing. And in addition, you should be able to design new algorithms to solve the problems. Of course, there's no point in trying to go through the algorithms that are already existing. You make use of those algorithms to solve certain programs that is there as a part of your curriculum. That will only cater the need of what is called as academic based education. But more than that, what is more important is you need to step out of your comfort zone. And over a period of time, once you are well versed with this particular subject, you actually should be able to design new algorithms to solve varieties of problems that are existing in computer science. As a matter of fact, there are quite good number of problems which are existing, which are actually yet to be solved. And not only from the practical point of view, from the theoretical point of view also, the study of algorithms has come to be recognized as the cornerstone of computer science. Let me also tell you that algorithms have indeed been around for centuries together, and scientists would have discovered and solved every algorithm by this time. And that's what is my feeling all about. But unfortunately, this is not actually speaking true. Solving a particular algorithm often presents a few more questions that the algorithm does not solve and that did not seem apparent until someone did come up with the solution. Algorithms are a series of steps used to solve the problem, and as a student, as a professional, we should not confuse them with other entities such as equations. So, algorithms are different and equations are different. And also, let me tell you that algorithm is never a solution in search of a problem. No one would create a series of steps to solve a problem that does not yet exist or may never exist at all. So, moving to the next point, what exactly you mean by an algorithm? I don't think I need to give you this particular definition, but still, algorithm is a finite step by step, well defined instructions of the sequence of activities that constitute a process of getting the desired outputs from given inputs. The raw material needed at the time of beginning is referred to as input, and the resting entity is referred as output. So it's as simple as step by step instructions defined to carry out your program or carry out to solve the problem statement is what we call it as algorithm. Step by step instructions. Now, let us see what exactly are the characteristics of algorithm. There are fundamentally six characteristics of algorithm which is available in front of you on the screen. They are clear and unambiguous, well-defined inputs, well-defined outputs, finiteness, feasible, and language independent. Let us just have a brief overview about all these six characteristics. As one would not follow any written instructions to cook the recipe in the kitchen, right? But only a standard one is actually followed. Similarly, I feel personally that not all written instructions for programming is an algorithm. And in order for some instructions to be an algorithm, it must have these six characteristics. Extremely important. As a programmer, you have to keep in mind whenever you go ahead in writing algorithm of any problem statement. And please remember, as long as your algorithm is more correct and accurate will be your resultant program. Now, when you look at the first characteristics of algorithm, what is called as clear and unambiguous, right? As the name suggests, the algorithm should be clear. Each of its steps should be clear in all aspects and must lead to only one meaning. You just cannot have the algorithm written like this where it gives me a picture that the first few lines of the algorithm is focusing on, let us say, factorial of a number, and then immediately when I go through the next couple of lines, right, it totally changes my mindset in terms of problem statement, and I feel that the next set of lines what you have written basically do not belong to what is called as factorial of a number, and it lands up belonging to altogether a different problem statement. And hence it is extremely important that the algorithms should be clear and unambiguous. Well defined inputs and well defined outputs goes hand in hand, right? If an algorithm says to take inputs, it should be well defined inputs, and the output which is yielded should be a well defined as well. So I always used to tell students that if at all you want to find out whether your program is working 100% or not, any number of input is not sufficient. But to prove that your program does not work, only one input is sufficient. And hence, what I'm trying to say is you need to have what is called as validation in your program. For example, this is one of my favorite example, which I keep telling students that if you are trying to write a program for a factorial of a number, you please ensure you have well-defined input and well-defined outputs. I have seen students giving input as 5 and you get the factor as 120. And then if I give minus 5 also, you'll end up getting the factorial as 120. So actually you're trying to tell there is no difference between minus 5 and 5. And that is where these second and third characteristics of algorithm, well-defined inputs and well-defined outputs, comes into picture. The next characteristics of algorithm is what is called as finiteness. Needless to say, the algorithm must be finite. It should not end up in an infinite loop or similar, right? So even though we define it as a step-by-step instructions, right, it should give you the output in a finite number of steps. It does not matter, right? Even the algorithm may take time to terminate. It does not really matter. It may take half day, it may take one day, it may take 2 days, but the algorithm should terminate. At any given point of time, your program, your algorithm should not go into an infinite loop. The next characteristics of algorithm is called as feasible. The algorithm must be simple, generic, and practical such that it can be executed upon the available resources. It must not contain some future technology or anything. See, it's as simple as if I ask you to write an algorithm for a particular problem statement, you should not write an algorithm which will work on those technologies or on those hardware devices which is not at all existing as of now. And you will end up saying that this algorithm will work on those technologies, which is going to be invented a couple of years down the line. Then it's of no use actually. So feasibility is extremely important. And the last characteristics of algorithm is called as language independent. The algorithm designed must be language independent. It should not depend on any programming language. It must be just plain instructions that can be implemented in any language, right? And apart from getting the output as expected, right, the output should also be same, and it should be easily understood by any user, right? So this is basically 6 characteristics of algorithm. Now let us proceed further and ensure how do we land up writing an algorithm. As I told earlier, there are no well defined standards for writing an algorithm. Rather, the algorithm, it is a problem and resource dependent. Algorithms are never written to support a particular programming code. Please understand this, right? As we all know that programming languages share basic code constructs, right? You have already done these type of constructs in C programming language. You have come across decision control structures. You have come across loop control structures. You have seen different constructs like arrays, strings, and all, right? These constructs can be used, right, to write an algorithm. So even though we write algorithm in a step-by-step manner in most of the cases, or probably in all the cases, but let me also tell you that this need not be the case all the time, because I personally feel algorithm writing is a process and it is executed after the problem domain is well defined. I repeat, after the problem domain is well defined. That is, we should know the problem domain for which we are designing a solution. So I just happen to give you a problem statement. It's very simple problem statement. I know it is not a problem statement that needs to be discussed in front of the audience who are studying design and analysis of algorithms. But then all great things are achieved with the small steps at the beginning. Design an algorithm to add two numbers and display the result, right? So just go through it. I don't think I need to explain you. I have just articulated my algorithm in 7 steps. We all know that algorithm tells the programmers how to code the program. Now the previous slide algorithm, which was in 7 steps, correct, I have written it in a slightly different way, and here I have articulated it in a much better fashion, and I have now come out with only 5 steps. Just go through it. Now let me tell you what made me to articulate the same algorithm in less number of steps. Of course the meaning is the same. Now, actually speaking, in design and analysis of algorithms, usually the method that is there in front of you on the screen, that is so called my second method, is actually used to describe an algorithm. This is because it makes it easy for the analyst to analyze the algorithm, ignoring all unwanted definitions. The analyst observe what operations are being used and how the process is flowing. Writing the step numbers is optional, right? And most of the time we say that it's a step-by-step procedure, and people say you should write step 1, step 2, step 3. I mean, it's fine, but it's actually an optional, right? And we design or we come out with algorithms actually to get solutions for varieties of problems that are existing. Now look at this. There is a particular problem statement, And to solve this particular problem statement, I just gave an example. There are four different solutions, correct? There are four different solutions. You will come across a couple of problem statements in your in this particular subject over a period of time where different set of people will give different set of solutions. It is quite possible these solutions comes as a matter of fact they would have used different algorithms to try to give the solutions for these problems. So, what I would like to tell you in a nutshell is good algorithms is like a knife. It does exactly what it is supposed to do with minimum efforts. And that is what algorithm is all about, right? Using wrong algorithm is like trying to cut a stick with a screwdriver. And I don't need to elaborate this. What happens is you may obtain a result, but you would have spent more effort, and hence it is extremely important for you to ensure that you basically land up writing good algorithms which is actually meant for the job that it is supposed to do, and not only that, the job should be done with minimum efforts. Hence, many solution algorithms can be derived for the problem, right? So, the next step is actually to analyze those proposed solution algorithms and implement the best suitable solutions for that. Just to give you an overview about it, let us try to write, I'll leave this to the reader, right, in terms of writing algorithms and programs, right? A very simple program of swapping two numbers. This particular program can be done in three different ways. The most simplest way is to make use of the third or the temporary variable to swap the values or the contents of two variables. And second one is to swap it without using third or temporary variables, and the third one, more efficient, is to swap it in one line. But sometimes the first two basically are not very much given importance from the industry point of view or probably from the interview point of view, right? The third one, swapping of two numbers in one line. And apart from that, one of the most common question that is asked is, can you write a macro to actually swap two numbers, right? And the macro that is given to you in front of your screen. That is how you land up writing a macro which will enable the programmer to swap two variables. Let us look at one more algorithm or the example of finding GCD of two numbers, right? So, I mean, not a great problem statement, but yes, we have four different methods of finding GCD of two numbers, right? One is Euclid's algorithm, which uses modulus concept. The another one is again the Euclid's algorithm, but this time it uses the concept of repetitive subtraction. Then you have something called as consecutive integer checking algorithm, and then the high school algorithm, which every one of us have done it, come across it during the high school days, what is called as prime factors. Now, I'm not going to go into deeper of all these things, just to give you a quick glance about finding the GCD of two numbers using modulus approach of Euclid's algorithm. Just go through it. The algorithm is given in front of you. Let me move into the next example, that is called as, do you know the largest prime number? Correct. And prime number, everybody knows what are the prime numbers. And if I ask somebody, hey, can you tell me some prime numbers, you just land up telling that, sir, 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, blah 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 and all. But let me tell you why I'm telling you this example here, because a lot of research is happening in the world, by various scientists and professors to find out the world's largest prime number. And just before telling you that, in terms of what is the largest prime number today, right, let me quote this, which was very well articulated and said by Paul Erdos, who said that God may not play dice with the universe, but something strange is going on in the universe with the prime numbers. Actually, Erdos was referring to Albert Einstein's famous belief that God does not play dice with the universe. You'll be surprised to see that as of January 2020, the largest known prime number is 2 to the power of 825899933 minus 1. I mean, I can just ignore that minus 1 And just imagine 2 to the power of 825899933 is just an unimaginable number, right? Of course, this is not done by me. I've just extracted from literature that as of January 2020, this is the largest known prime number. And the beauty of this is this number is 24862 digits long. Correct? How do I pronounce it? Units, tens, hundreds, thousand, 10,000, lakhs, 10 lakhs, crores. So I can say this particular number is 2 crores 48 lakhs 62,000 plus digits long. My goodness, right? Now, this particular largest known prime number was actually invented by Professor Patrick Laroche of Great Internet Mersenne Prime Search Organization. Of course, as of January 1, 2018, the largest prime number was this, which was just 17 plus digits long, by Professor Curtis Cooper at University of Central Missouri in Warrensburg. And things have moved along in a span of 2 years, right? So that is the world's largest known prime number as of now. And if you look at this January 1, 2018 largest prime number, this is what I could extract, that if you spend 12 hours a day writing out at the rate of 1 digit per second, it will take 403 days to complete. Oh my God, it's more than a year. And if you want to number, right, it would eat up 5319 pages of A4 if you use it at Courier new font at 11. Dr. Cooper's computer took 39 days of flat out computing to verify that this number was actually indeed a prime number, right? He had crunched the number as a result of running the GIMS software on 1,000 computers at the university. Dr. Cooper's find was verified by other powerful computers running different softwares. So these were the three examples, I just thought of sharing with you in the introduction part, right? So we now just give a break, and in my next video you will see, or we will discuss what is called as fundamentals of algorithmic problem solving. See you then.